Wage negotiations between gold producers and unions continued today, with gold producers tabling their opening offer of a 4% increase on basic pay across the board and a 4% increase in the living out or housing allowance. This is in response to the union's demands of 60 to 100%. Now we hope they can find some middle ground there as we aim to find out that middle turf. Elise Strydom, chief negotiator at the Chamber of Mines, joins us straight out of the negotiating process. You must be exhausted.
I am indeed, yes, I am.
But this is going to be the story of your life for a while.
For a while, yes.
Where do we go from here, Elise? 4% on the table, wanting 60 to 100%, a long way off.
A long way off. We did put this on the table this morning, but before we did, we also had a long discussion again with the trade unions and with all the shop stewards sitting there. And we again tried to picture or paint the picture of the economic realities facing gold. We thought it was very important for the unions to try and understand where we are coming from. It's very important that we ensure that there's a sustainable gold industry, and not only to the benefit of the companies and shareholders, but also to the benefit of the employees. So, we had quite a long discussion on that, and then we made our offer. And we are due to meet again on the 24th of July.
But is the industry sustainable? That's the question.
Most companies are saying they can't make profits below $1,500 an ounce.
But you also have the problem of what are called the critical mass. For instance, if you've got, say, 10 mines in a region and 9 of them are shut and you've got 1 standing, they've got to do all the pumping that 10 were doing, for instance. And so you actually have a natural increase when you lose the critical mass, in a sense that the supply chains then are weakened and all of that sort of thing, which also raises costs.
Yes, indeed. That's what we also shared with the unions. We have to be leaders. We have to really think about what is in the best interest of the industry. This is our industry, and we have to make some tough choices. This is negotiations. This is a process of give and take. And we all have to really try and find one another. It's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but we have to do it. This is for the benefit of the mining industry. It's for the benefit of South Africa.
If you get let's call it, as you call it, a sustainable agreement going forward, at what stage would you think that gold production can actually stabilize and maybe even respond to, let's say, the gold price recovers and that, and actually respond to it? Or are we actually watching a death spiral?
In 2011, the trade unions and the chamber actually agreed to collectively look at ways in which to increase production, because, as you know very well, 10 years ago we were the number 1 producer in the world, and now we're number 6. We've even been overtaken by Peru.
I think we are number 1 in reserve still by a long way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we did create a task team comprising the 3 unions, and of course we will now bring AMCU on board to explain to them, what needs to be done. The unions, I think, appreciate that we need to do something about turning this around. At this stage, I think people are saying we work in the gold mining industry, I think 220 days out of 360 days a year. We could possibly look at doing something about that. This task team has done its work. It will present us with their findings soon, and we do appreciate it. Unless we do something about production levels, George, we're in trouble.
Let's bring you in here.
I've got a question on the trade-off between labour and mechanisation, and a lot of people talk about mines now considering increasingly going the route of mechanisation to try and recapture some of that productivity that you're talking about, perhaps longer work hours, for example, because machines can. And perhaps they can go deeper and tolerate higher temperatures and things like that. Now, I read reports about mines abroad going the mechanisation route to try and extract some of those efficiencies. Is there appreciation on the part of the on the part of the unions that perhaps trends abroad have been somewhat different to what they are back home, and that there perhaps are alternatives in the methods and ways of mining going forward?
Yes, they are aware of it, and we have had some discussions, and of course, you know, the closer we get to actually trying to seriously look at this and implement it, the more we'll have to engage with the trade unions, because I mean, you know what that would mean to labour numbers.
Of course.
And it will be very important for us as a country to then look at what we do with people who then, you know, the numbers will have to be reduced. Reskilling, upskilling, multi-skilling, all those types of things, but it will be a collective effort. Government will also help us.
You mentioned this collective effort, and obviously the
Yes.
intention is to find that middle ground.
Yes.
What is your instinct saying right now in terms of these wage negotiations? We haven't had an easy time of it in South Africa. Let's not, you know, really sort of sweeten the whole situation. Are you anticipating tough times ahead for us?
Yes, I am. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And it doesn't mean that we should continuously engage one another. And the message needs to go through. This is about our industry. This is about our country. And we need to find each other, make compromises, have difficult discussions, but we have to do this, and we have to find one another. Negotiations, you have to end up with an agreement, and we have to look at issues of sustainability. Very important, you know.
You were talking earlier, sorry to interrupt there, George, you were saying that there could be a myriad of different elements that lead to a retracement of the rand very quickly. This is one of those elements. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, mining and gold mining in particular, I mean, it's a huge source of revenue for this country. So, of course, it's a vitally important sector to this economy. And in fact, we've pegged mining, and it's not just gold mining, but mining in general, as one of the big risk factors going forward. And potentially, you're quite right, one of the big risk factors to the rand, because of the systemic importance that it has, not just on the direct employment of the mining sector as such, but of all the downstream industries that follow.
Because it's not just mining; it's the industrial complex that comes with it. That where South Africa's got such a huge competitive advantage. But the question about sustainability, etc., we've seen the unions involved in a turf battle, and to what extent is, how could you say, the opening battle, trying to outbid each other to see who can be the more radical and more unreasonable, if you like, or to what extent will they take their eye off the ball about the actual sustainability of the industry?
That's where, you know, the job becomes very hard and very tough. That's why, and we haven't done it before, we had a pre-negotiations workshop last week where we had economists to come and talk to us. That's why we spent another hour this morning sketching the realities, you know, constantly getting this message through. The ultimate aim should be to save this industry. This shouldn't be about inter-union rivalry. It should be about jobs, retaining jobs, making sure that our industry survives. And if I can just say, we've had 3 meetings now with all 4 unions present, because AMCU is part of our wage negotiations, and thus far it has gone well. We have all engaged one another in a very professional manner, and I am cautiously optimistic, you know, that we will continue to be professional about this and then focus on what needs to be done for this industry.
So if I can just jump in, so we shouldn't read too much into the 60% NUM was asking for and the 100% AMCU was asking for. We shouldn't read too much into that in terms of lines being hardened with regards to the negotiations. As such, are you suggesting that there's still some sort of an amicable road through this? Because, you know, looking from the outside in, you see 4% on one hand and 60 to 100% on the other, and it just seems like an absolute gulf dividing the two. And even if you had to either split that down the middle, I mean, it would horrify the markets.
It's just so far apart. I think
it's
that's
so far apart, and it's going to be tough. There's no two ways about it. But that's part of the job. This is going to take, I think, a month or two, and it's going to take hard discussions, and we have to try to do this. But yes, I can't deny that this is going to be very tough. People are very far apart.